So hello, welcome to this Facebook Live where I'm going to be talking about this topic, MECFS and healing pain. And it's going to be in two parts. The first part, which we'll do today, I'm going to give an overview talking about the types of pain that we can experience, how the brain processes pain, and I'll give you an overview of solutions. And in the second part, we'll go into that in a bit more depth, focusing on neuroplasticity and mind-body techniques. So feel free to just let me know in the chat whether you're watching live or replay. Just put hashtag live, hashtag replay, and also be interested to know what's brought you to watch this video, what your interest is, what your experience is. So first question I've got for you is, where is pain produced? Pain is produced in the brain. Okay, now that might sound counterintuitive. You think, well, actually, if I bash my finger with a hammer, surely the pain is produced in my finger. What happens is that a signal is sent along the nerve, up the spine, into the brain, and the brain evaluates that signal. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But we know that if we cut the nerve, then someone doesn't experience pain when they're bashing their finger with a hammer. Okay, so let's talk about the different types of pain. So first kind of pain I want to talk about is acute pain. Okay, and that can take a number of forms. So it might be an infection, and for some people with MECFS, fibromyalgia, long-covid, that was the source. Could be medication, including pain meds. Pain medications taken long-term can actually cause a cycle of pain. Okay, very interesting. Could be inflammation that is driving the pain. And actually there's a number of things that can drive inflammation. One is our diet. So there are functional medicine doctors who talk about this, who talk about, for example, having a diet that's high in sugar, high in processed carbs can drive inflammation, and that can result in pain. It can, drive things like arthritis. And if I think back to when I was younger, my diet was pretty much cereal, toast, biscuits for snacks. I'd have a sandwich with a tiny piece of lettuce and a tiny piece of tomato, but lots of bread, and I'd have Snickers or Marathon in the afternoon, and I would have a bit of veg, protein, and lots of carbs, more than one helping of potatoes, pasta, etc. And so, once I started learning that those kind of carbs turn into sugar, cause inflammation, I started changing my approach to what I ate, and now my diet is much lower in those sugars that actually cause us a lot of health problems, including inflammation. Inflammation can also be caused by stress, and it can be caused by certain medications. And I know in my case that the stress I experienced over a period of a few years when I took on a management job actually impacted my digestive system, and I think that drove the fibromyalgia symptoms that I experienced. So as I say, inflammation can be caused by stress as well, and also meds. And there might be other things that can drive inflammation. Next thing, type of acute pain is injury. Could be an accident. So I, a few years ago, it's a slightly embarrassing story, I sprained my ankle. It is a funny but embarrassing story. If you'd like to know that, let me know. I'll tell it another time. I've worked with clients who, for example, have been in a car accident 20 years ago, and they're still experiencing some pain as a result of that. And I'll talk a bit more about what may be going on in that situation. Next thing that can drive acute pain is lifestyle. So, for example, if someone is having too much activity, that can drive pain. I know someone who does lots of long distance running, and I remember seeing them posting about the fact that they spend quite a lot of money on chiropractic, etc., because their body's objecting to the amount of physical activity that they're doing, I suspect. Also, we could be doing too little physical activity, and obviously that's understandable if you've got a health condition like MECFS, but a lot of people who don't have those conditions don't do enough physical activity, and their muscles become unconditioned, and that can cause all sorts of problems. A while back, I've got this little trampoline, and sometimes in the morning I'd get on it and do some bouncing, and I didn't warm up, and I pulled a muscle in my upper leg, and it was really uncomfortable. And for about a week I was not walking comfortably, and at night it would feel worse, and it kind of drained my energy just having that injury. But it's okay now, and I make a point of warming up now. Sometimes the acute pain can be kind of developmental. For instance, if someone's got poor posture. I remember working with a client who kind of was always sitting in an asymmetrical way with her head to one side. And when I said to her, are you aware of the fact that you're kind of sitting in this kind of posture? And I'd invite you to just correct your posture and see how that feels. And she said, that feels really weird. And I suspect it's because she was so used to adopting a kind of stress posture that became familiar. And to actually sit symmetrically was very unfamiliar and a bit uncomfortable. And I challenged her to kind of work at it and to really keep correcting her posture. And the point was that she was saying that she was experiencing a lot of neck pain. And I'm not an osteopath, but I suspected there might have been a link. And so sometimes that development can be driven by kind of what's going on in their mindset. This person recognised they were stressed a lot and holding stress postures. And if you observe people, sometimes you'll notice people clenching their jaw a lot. Some people literally walking down the street and they look like they're kind of in a real state of tension. So it's just something to be aware of. Surgery can be something that drives acute inflammation, and toxins can drive acute pain. Some people also recognise that emotions can be a factor. So, many of us have had the experience of being upset and getting a lump in our throat. And maybe whilst that's not an acute pain, I have observed that people have experienced acute pain, and it does seem to be related to what's going on emotionally. I remember chatting to a friend who was experiencing some back pain, and we did a process that actually I've shared recently in the last few weeks, and I'll maybe pop the link in the blurb to this video. And I took her through this process. We were actually sitting in a cafe, and I said, look, this is a bit strange, but I'm happy to do it if you like. And she said, yeah. And we did this process, and she actually realised there was an emotional source of her pain, and she recognised she needed to take some action to address the things that were causing her that stress. And I remember a friend telling me that she had a bit of a difficult relationship with her mum, and at one point she really challenged her mum. And her mum got so angry because she was not used to being challenged that she developed a migraine. And my friend said, I suspect that's happened before, that she gets angry about something, she gets a migraine. I'm not suggesting that that's always the cause of migraines, because it's not. But it's just considering that link. And I remember a time when I'd done this counselling course, and I was asked to be part of the support team for one of the courses, and each of us had to lead a little splinter group at one point, and I found that so stressful that I kind of was clenching my muscles, and we were sitting in this group, and I got really intense pain in my calf and had to massage it and stand up. And it was because of the stress that I was experiencing. Consider that pain is the body's way of protecting us. So as I say, I sprained my ankle one time and I was on crutches. And so over time, the swelling reduced, the pain reduced, the tissue healed. I was given exercises to strengthen my ankles. And every time I made a smoothie, which I still do, I do some of these exercises. So probably my ankles are stronger now than they were before I sprained them, because I have been doing this exercise probably for 3-4 years. Okay, every morning when I'm making a smoothie. Now, sometimes what happens is we experience an accident. I mentioned someone who was in a car crash. The tissue heals, but sometimes the pain signal continues. And that can result in chronic pain. So chronic pain, fibromyalgia is an example of that, where something's continued for 2-3 months or more. And as I say, usually the tissue damage has been resolved according to pain specialists, but the pain continues. So we need to understand how the brain works. So let's talk about that. There's an interesting TED talk by a pain researcher called Lorimer Moseley. It's very amusing. He's an Aussie guy. And he talks about being in the outback. He's walking along and suddenly feels this sensation in his leg. And he says what happens is the signal travels up from the leg to the base of the spine, up the spinal cord, into the brain, and gets processed by the brain. So the brain evaluates that signal. It contextualizes the information. So it might say, well, how much pain is it? What could be a possible cause of this based on previous experience? And this chap has said, his brain interpreted that sensation in his leg as it's probably a twig. There's been many times I've been walking in the bush, scraped my leg on a twig, I've got a scratch. And so the brain decides that that signal is not anything to be concerned about. So it kind of turns down the pain signal. So this chap then goes for a swim in the lake. He comes out of the lake and collapses because in fact he's been bitten by an eastern brown snake, which apparently is highly poisonous. People die from those bites, but he survives. And he says, consider another time I was walking in the outback. After that, I noticed that I have that sensation in my leg. Something's kind of caused a sensation in my leg. The signal goes to the brain. The brain contextualizes that signal. And it might say, oh my goodness, it could be a snake, in which case the brain will turn up the pain signal and the person will actually, know that they need to take action. And he says that in this situation, it was actually a twig. All right. And he also talks about how perception is important. So there's one experiment where they place a cold metal on someone's hand and the person either sees a red light or a blue light. And they don't explain the meaning of the light, but there's a difference between the experience of the sensation of the metal on the person's hand if they see the red light or the blue light. Have a guess. What difference do you think they notice between seeing the red light and the blue light? What happens is when people see the red light, the cold metal hurts more. It's more uncomfortable. When they see the blue light, it hurts less. So what's your interpretation of that? Interesting to consider. And pain researchers say that when that pain is continuing, it's due to sensitivity of the nervous system. Now that could be environmental. So, for example, if someone goes, my boss talked about this, if someone goes to the pain clinic, they keep seeing the word pain. And what happens when they see the word pain? What do you think they think about? And then they see the doctor or specialist, and the doctor asks them, how's your pain? And they're asking them lots of questions about the pain, so they're thinking about the pain. Okay, so actually I'm not going to use the word pain anymore. I'm going to talk about the word sensation. Okay, what difference do you notice between saying pain or symptom or sensation? When I invite clients to think about sensations and describe what they're experiencing as a sensation, they say actually it's less emotive. Whereas when I talk about pain, it's like a alarm bell goes off. Whereas when I talk about sensation, it might be a good sensation, it might be a neutral sensation, or it might be an uncomfortable sensation. So, we also need to consider kind of social factors. Okay, so for example, when I belonged to an ME group, people would say, how are you? And I would launch into how I'm feeling, the symptoms I'm experiencing, etc. And every person I met would ask the same question. And so I'd launch into this conversation maybe 10 times. How do you think I felt by the end of talking about my symptoms, etc., 10 times? Didn't feel good. So what I decided is actually, I'm not going to really talk about this anymore. I'm just going to say I'm a work in progress, and then I'd change the subject. Okay. And actually I found by doing that, we get kind of engrossed in a more interesting, stimulating conversation. For that amount of time, I wouldn't be thinking about the sensations. And so it was a break from that. It's giving my mind and body and my physiology a break from, the challenges I was dealing with. I'd like you to consider, when have you been socially engaged? You've had an interesting conversation with someone, or maybe you've been doing a fun activity, and those sensations have reduced. Okay. There might be cultural factors. For example, I remember reading this book which talked about Aborigines in the outback, and one of the things that they would do is, if they were experiencing discomfort, strong sensations, they divert their focus. They'd focus on another part of the body. Okay, there may be also, so that's kind of cultural factors. There may be kind of psychological factors. So we know that some individuals have a different kind of pain threshold or sensation threshold. I remember when I had my wisdom teeth taken out, I felt quite stiff the next day. Apparently my chest was stiff, and someone said, it's because they're kind of putting their knee on your chest as they're pulling the wisdom teeth out. Don't know if that's true, but I certainly had this discomfort. And I took it really easy, whereas one of my sisters, when she had her wisdom teeth taken out, she was up baking and cooking and being busy and not being a wimp like me. And, we know all about man flu, that, there's this idea that men are a bit more wimpish when they get flu. Other indicators of kind of the psychological aspect of that experiment I just talked about, where people see the blue light, the red light. There's an interesting study that I talked about recently related to the placebo effect, where boys in Japan were brushed by this poison ivy, but they were told it was a harmless branch, and they didn't have any rash on their skin. And they were also brushed with a harmless branch, but they were told it was poison ivy, and their skin came up in a rash, and they were experiencing sensation. We also know our thoughts, emotions, behaviours can influence our sensation. So if we're not feeling calm, and feeling tired and feeling a bit stressed, then those sensations can be more exacerbated. When we are feeling calm, when we're feeling good, they can lessen. And as I said earlier, if we're engaged in something, then people have noticed that the sensations are reduced. And there can be biological factors. So, for example, as I've already just said, if we're stressed, then that's going to affect our biology and that may turn up the sensation. So, what are solutions? So, let's talk a little bit, very briefly, about solutions. As I say, I'm going to go into this in more depth in part 2. So, consider that different things work for different people, but there are some fundamental principles. So, if we think about what we've been talking about inflammation, then one thing to consider is nutrition. Now, there are a million different diets you could go on, but one fundamental principle is that actually having a diet that's high in sugar isn't great. Okay, having a diet that where you're eating a wide variety of foods. Apparently there are some 300,000 foods that we can eat, or plants that we can eat, and yet we eat a fraction of those. And actually what we know is the more variety we have, the better that is for our microbiome. It encourages growth of healthy bacteria. Okay, so it's really important to make sure you're getting a variety of foods. If you're in my Facebook group, MECFS Explored, in the file section, there is a rainbow chart which gives you ideas about eating colours of the rainbow. Okay, so clean up your diet. One of my clients said that when she cut out drinking diet sodas, her leg pain disappeared. Okay, so, and she thinks it was the artificial sweeteners in the drinks. Okay, and for me, working on healing my gut absolutely had a significant effect on reducing my fibromyalgia, as did stress reduction. Okay, so it might be there's some interventions that may help. So, for example, years ago, I got an injury in my kind of right side of my belly from picking up my girlfriend, which wasn't probably a very sensible thing to do. And I had that injury for a year, and it was kind of uncomfortable getting out of bed. I had to stop playing football, and I went to have acupuncture. And you may think, oh, well, acupuncture, isn't that a bit woo-woo? But there is actually good research that shows that it works, including acupuncture done on animals, and animals don't know about the placebo effect. Okay, and within just a few treatments, 80-90% of those symptoms disappeared, and I was able to play football again. Movement is an important piece of the jigsaw, and obviously, if you have MECFS, fibromyalgia, long COVID, you have to do movement mindfully if you can, and do it within your limits. Okay, but what you're doing is teaching your body that you're safe, and when you do that, you kind of turn the pain signals down. So I had a client who I started working with a few months ago. He had long COVID, and he wanted to get on his bike, but he was very nervous about doing that. So I said to him, why don't you just sit on your bike for a while? Do nothing else, just sit on your bike, just get your mind, body, brain used to that, knowing that your body is completely safe. And when you're ready, you can just do a little really small bike ride. And actually, when he felt ready, he did a 5 or 10 minute bike ride and felt okay. And then he was able to build up. Okay, so that's just an example of that, taking a safe, gentle approach. We may use distraction techniques. So there was an interesting report that when burn wound victims were having their dressings changed, they were in a lot of discomfort. But when they were given a game to play with kind of visors, that distraction meant that they didn't notice so much having their dressings changed. And although obviously burn wounds is an acute pain, it does have application to perhaps chronic conditions. So distraction might be doing something fun, enjoyable. I remember one time when I had ME, I was really tired, and then I actually spent some time with friends, and we had fun, and I felt much better for it. And it was still useful to kind of stay within my capacity. If I'd stayed up all night, then I would have felt tired. But, I spent enough time with them to actually just relax my mind-body physiology and got the benefits from that and kind of left on a high. And the next piece that we'll talk about, and we'll talk about this in kind of part 2, is neuroplasticity. Okay, we'll talk about what it is, how it works, what its applications are to chronic pain. So if you've got any questions, do post them below. Just to let you know that I am about to start a new group program called Building Resilience. I'm going to be starting in a couple of weeks. If you'd like to know more about that, just put the word group below. If you're watching on Facebook, and tag me. If you're watching on YouTube, comment below with the word group, and I'll send you a link where you can message me, and I'll send you a link with more information. As I said, if you've got any questions, post them below. If you want to talk to me directly, then just get in touch. But let's pause there. Maybe we'll finish with a very brief relaxation. So as long as it's safe for you to do so, I'd invite you to close your eyes. Obviously, don't close your eyes if it's not safe to do so. And I'd like you just to take a breath, breathing in through your nose, breathing into your belly, as long as that's comfortable to do so, breathing out through your nose. Again, take a breath in, breathing in through your nose, into your belly. And when you're ready, breathing out slowly. And when we're breathing in a relaxed way, our breath is quiet. And it's slow. It's relaxed. As you breathe in, I'd like you to just say to yourself in your head, relax, as you just allow your mind and body to relax, soften, let go. Once again, breathe in. As you breathe out, again, quietly in your head, just say relax, allowing your mind and body to soften, relax, and let go. Once more, as you breathe in, breathing into your belly, breathing out through your nose, just say the word relax. And now I'd like you to imagine your breath as a colour. What colour is it? Breathing in that colour, seeing it into your lungs. Now seeing that oxygen being picked up by the blood and circulating around your body, taking the oxygen and nutrients to the cells. And as the cells receive the nutrients and the oxygen, take in that goodness and release anything that is no longer needed, which gets picked up by the blood and sent to the parts of the body that clean and filter the blood, the liver. As you breathe in and out, breathing in that colour, breathe out, just letting go of anything you no longer need. You consider you can just do this little short exercise whenever you want. You can just spend a minute or a few minutes once, twice, 3 times, 5 times a day. Just as a little way, taking a moment for yourself. Consider the words of one of my mentors, a chap called Brian Johnson. He says, when I can, I meditate for 20 minutes. When I can't do that, I meditate for 10 or 5 or 1. Or I just take 1 breath. Consider that if you take 1 breath, you are a meditator. So you may want to just carry on relaxing, or if you're ready, when you're ready, you can just open your eyes, bring yourself back. Just let me know. We just did that exercise for a few minutes. Let me know how you found it. But for now, I'll say thanks for watching. Wishing you great health. And bye for now.